everybody, Mandy Friedman here, licensed professional clinical counselor, clinically certified domestic violence counselor, clinically certified trauma professional, the creator of SNAP, survivors of narcissistic and abusive personalities, the owner of Claremont Mental Health. Today, we are talking about spiritual abuse with this guy. Guess who he is? This is my brother.
Hey, I'm Andrew. Nice to meet you.
And we grew up in a church.
We did. We grew up in a churchy household, we might say, which is very specific to our topic today.
Yep. So I thought he would be the perfect person to help me record this topic. So let's get started.
Absolutely.
What is spiritual abuse?
Yes, so spiritual abuse is something we've experienced, definitely, probably a lot, and it's a misuse of power by spiritual leaders, church leaders, religious leaders, those types, and their failure to protect and nurture the well-being of those that follow them.
Exactly. So this person has a position of power, and furthermore, it's like God gave them the power.
Correct.
So it's not just them, it's that they've been, ordained by God and been given the position of a shepherd over their flock, right?
The ultimate gatekeeper.
Yeah. And this person is using it to benefit themselves, to subjugate others, and to maintain control, to make money. Yeah?
All these things.
All of those things. But what is spiritual abuse not? What is it not?
It's an interesting subject because it's very easy to say what it is because we've seen it quite a bit. It's a very common thing, and once you know how to identify it, you'll see it everywhere. But what it's not is those church leaders that walk the walk, talk the talk. They're actually supportive of you. They're the ones who are going to be there when you're down. It's interesting. I know one of those folks, and I spoke to one of those folks today. He's been in our life a long time, and guess where he was?
Where?
He was at the hospital visiting someone, and he hasn't been a minister for many years. Mm-hmm. And he's still walking the walk and talking the talk. So those are the kinds of folks that are not going to, spiritually abuse you. So, many different kinds of abuse.
Lots of kinds of abuse. So they're walking the walk. They embody the principles and the values in their own lives. That's how they live their lives, and that's how they treat people. And then, what else? They're also approachable and are open to debates and questioning.
Right, which is very important because, one of the biggest traits of a spiritual abuser is they don't want to answer questions. They don't want to be questioned because, first of all, they don't have an explanation, that's based in reality, and also because that's part of their abuse pattern. That's part of how they control you because you can't question them. They are literally, in some cases, the hand of God. They are the gatekeepers of the afterlife and your spiritual realization. So, that kind of person, you don't want to question them. Right?
No. The other thing that they're not is that, a spiritual abuser is somebody that leads with coercive control. And it might be subtle forms of coercive control. But someone who's not a spiritual abuser, their leadership style is warm, caring, respectful, and understanding of your position in the world and your position in life, and treating people as individuals. That is what a spiritual leader should be like. And they're also not vilifying other belief systems. I think this is a telltale sign of spiritual abuse is when we're taking, major religions of, massive populations, and they have their own belief systems, and then making that like that doesn't count or that those people are going to hell, but vilifying someone who thinks differently is a key indicator of spiritual abuse.
Well, just by existing, those other belief systems are threatening to the abuser, right? Mm-hmm. So we got to nip that in the bud. We can't be, even considering that there's any other way to think.
Because we have to keep the flock right here. And if you start questioning and looking at other things, then that invites change.
Yes. It also invites more questions.
Right. And outsiders and outside perspectives. And like you say, we can't have that. Also, it is not always an obviously cult-like environment. So if you're expecting to see something that's like obviously a cult, or cult-like, that won't be it either. Sometimes it's warm and fuzzy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sometimes it's warm and fuzzy and welcoming. And it's not something that seems extreme. It seems kind of normal-ish, at first until you figure out what's going on. And then two, when they're helping others, they're helping from a genuine sense of compassion, and compassion and help is not transactional.
Right. Yes. Very important. Whereas, a spiritual abuser might use the phrase "you owe me" or "you owe the church," which would probably be more likely thing that they would say. And we understand too that this subject might be offensive to folks that are involved in religion. And to me, I feel like that if you've been to a church for an extended part of time, no matter what kind of church it is, you've probably witnessed or been a part of spiritual abuse, whether you know it or not. And so it's something that's widespread and widely accepted, but that doesn't mean that it's offensive to look at, because again, if we're saying that it's offensive to question these things and look at them, we're kind of adopting the role of the abuser a little bit. So
exactly. So this topic should not be stigmatized in
Right.
itself
Yes.
to even have a conversation about it. But I'm so glad you brought that up. If this is making you uncomfortable, there might be a reason for that. It is a hot topic. It's something that is close to our hearts because it has to do with our upbringing, how we were raised, has to do with generations of upbringings. It has to do with geography, where you live and what the culture is there. And a lot of people have a lot of good things that come out of their religion and spiritual beliefs. And therefore, we're not trying to poo-poo on your spiritual beliefs at all. What we're trying to do is make sure that you're safe as you're practicing your religious and spiritual beliefs, that you're doing it in a safe place with safe people. That's the important thing here. And that you have information that you can use to look around and assess and see if perhaps the reason you don't feel that great about yourself all the time is because your church makes you feel like garbage. Maybe that's something to consider. Okay, now, when identifying, that's a good segue, right? When identifying spiritual abuse, what is it that we're looking for? Well, one of the things is that there is a strong emphasis on spreading the gospel, spreading the word, and recruiting new church members. And you had something to say about this particular element of spiritual abuse.
Yeah, well, I have an anecdote, from when I was younger. It's just something I don't feel very good about that happened to me because of spiritual abuse. And, when we were young, we were taught that you believe this one thing. If you don't believe that, then when you die, you're going to be thrown in a lake of fire and burned for the eternity. That's what, we were brought up to believe, which, I don't necessarily believe that now, but that's where we're at. So when I was younger, I had friends who didn't believe that, and they would ask me sometimes about that. And I remember one friend in particular who I really admired and thought was like an amazing person that I wanted to get closer to. And they just straight up asked me, they said, "So you believe I'm gonna burn in hell when I die if I don't believe what you believe?" And I said, "Yeah." And I was real serious about it. And first of all, what a terrible witness for my religion. You know what I mean? If I am trying to, have a relationship with this person, and not that I was trying to recruit her or anything, but that's not a very good sales pitch. You know what I mean? And also, I just feel like that in a way I was a spiritual abuser at that point because, I just feel awful about that. We were never friends like we could have been after that. It just, to me, the friendship kind of always had that weird thing in the middle of it. I drove a wedge between us by judging them when I'm not them, and why would I judge another person?
Well, let's answer that question. Because you said that you in a way kind of participated in the abuse by telling this person you thought that they were going to go to hell. But here's the deal, though. You're an empathic person. You care about people. And if we were indoctrinated and were taught by our parents, by the adults in our lives, and the leadership we were around that was true, and you didn't know any other way, and that if you thought another way, you were wrong. The people you love in your life, what do?
You try to
rescue and save, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the manipulative element here, is that you're being told that people you love would burn in hell.
So you better recruit them.
It's an imperative to save them because you're a good person.
Right.
But that is the product of spiritual abuse. That is something that happens as the result of spiritual abuse. Does it cause harm in people? Yes. But you were not the perpetrator in that scenario. You were somebody that was indoctrinated and really genuinely thought that they were doing something good for other people. Spiritual abusers don't truly believe that they're necessarily doing great works for others. They just need you to think that about them. They need you to believe that they're doing great things and that they're compassionate and kind and that the good deeds that they do, notice that they're doing the good deeds with an audience around. Notice that it's about like accountability and subservience and who showed up and who was late and who didn't do what they were told to do. That's not the same thing as you saying, hey, best friend and someone I care about, I really feel afraid for your soul. That's a genuine, authentic thing that you're trying to help someone, but the person who's the perpetrator is more interested in lining their pockets, finding people for their bedroom.
Yeah.
Sorry, but that happens. Feeling important and being treated like a leader and having power over others. That's what they're getting off on. And they're weaponizing religion and weaponizing spirituality in order to play out their fantasies of control and power in a church. And guess who really loves hiding in churches?
Narcissists.
Narcissists and abusers love to hide in the church. It's the best place for them to hide.
Yeah, kind of a playground for folks like that.
Playground. And then you have people that are there with true and genuine intentions, and they're the ones that get swept up into what's happening with the manipulative, abusive types that are weaponizing it. Okay, so that was what to look for, and we said there's an emphasis on spreading the word and recruiting new members. Another thing to look for is this concept, what you mentioned a minute ago, of them being the gatekeepers of the afterlife and the gatekeepers of your spiritual self-actualization. And what I mean by spiritual self-actualization is you're on your own spiritual journey of growth that requires you to have ups and downs and bottoms and be confused and ask questions. Life is messy, and figuring out what you believe and what works best for you is a journey in itself. And that is the self-actualization part, that you can really explore that fully and make an informed decision about what it is that you're participating in. But if you are not encouraged to self-actualize spiritually, then chances are there's some spiritual abuse happening.
Well, if you can't do it without me, that
Right.
kind of thing. And it's a lot. Not every religion is this way. Some of it's baked in, is that there is a, like I said, a gatekeeper, someone, who without them you cannot access the spiritual deity or whatever it is that you're worshiping. And so, churches in general, going to them, you have to go there to access the, There's a whole kind of system at work a lot of times for some of these things. But, I feel like that's very important just to emphasize that this is not someone at your job keeping you from a promotion. This is someone who, if you're a believer, is keeping you from God, from the person who created you maybe, and maybe from a life after this one, which is a little more important than a raise, for most folks.
Right, absolutely. And then we have a common thing to look for is shaming and stigmatizing of normal human experiences. Normal. Guess what? People have sex outside of marriage. Holy fucking shit.
When we were younger, we went to a church, and this was something that it kind of leads into as well, the use of the crowd against a person, you know. There was a young lady that was there. She was the sweetest girl, and she loved her boyfriend, and they were just always together, and you knew they were going to get married one day. It was like one of those kind of, you know, young groups of young people. And she got pregnant. And the church was shocked and scandalized, you know, and the way that they responded to that was, well, we need to get this out in the open. We need to air this out. So they made her get up in front of everyone at the church and apologize to the congregation for getting pregnant.
Now, did he have to get up in front of the church and apologize?
Oh, he stood up there with her.
He did?
But he didn't have to apologize.
He didn't have to apologize.
No.
Okay, so the impregnator did not apologize.
That's correct.
But he stood by her side while she apologized, because she's the one that really did something
I would
wrong.
imagine that kid was a pretty good kid, too. And I would imagine that he chose to be up there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
I can totally see that. Him being like, no, I'm going up with her.
But again, that's demonizing a normal behavior. And imagine if these kids had more education, you know, and that maybe this normal behavior wasn't something that was stigmatized in their life. Maybe this, this surprise wouldn't have happened. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it all turned out great for them, too. It's just a shame that they had to be ostracized. And, you know, in Catholicism, there's excommunication. You know, so I mean, it's baked in.
And Mormonism.
It's baked into a lot of these religions and a lot of these belief systems. So,
yeah. So it's that you are questioning your identity. You're questioning your sexuality. You're questioning who you want to be and what kind of person you want to marry and how you want to raise your kids. That's normal. All of that is normal. Having human experiences are normal things. I can't say that enough. That's one of the main problems is, like, for example, there's an increased and emphasized stigma toward mental health care in these settings. You don't need therapists. You don't need science. You don't need science to help you. Right. You can go to your minister, and they can provide, Christian counseling or spiritual counseling or whatever they would call it there with the church with this person who may have taken a few classes on that, but certainly wouldn't be like super trauma informed, especially if you're coming to your minister with something that is a heavy duty thing.
Which is usually the case.
Because you can trust me. This is who you talk to. And imagine how that would damage you and the re-traumatization that takes place when you're coming to this person and saying, hey, I was raped by that dude. Yeah, your best buddy. He raped me, and he raped her, and he raped her, and he raped her. You know? And coming forward and thinking that this person's going to go, what? Well, let's take care of this right now. This is not okay. You can't do that to these women, and instead it's, well, now let's
not ruin anyone's life here.
Let's not ruin anyone's life here, and let's think about your part. What part did you play in this event, and what could you do better next time? Let's pray about it. You know?
Well, you know what? I got access to God, so let's talk to Him real quick about it.
But you definitely don't need therapy.
And you hear that voice? I know it sounds like mine, but it's shocking how some of these things can happen, and like I said, we speak from experience, so that's why I feel confident talking about this.
Let's also say that we had good experiences and we had bad experiences.
Of course.
So anyone that we know that might hear this, you know who you are if you're one of the good ones. And those are the people that meet you where you are in life without judgment, and they see you as a human being and not as something that needs to be fixed. That's how you can tell the difference. Okay, also, if you notice that you get shamed or punished for questioning leaders, like we mentioned before, that would be a telltale sign. Okay, now, we're wrapping it up with the last section here, which is, how does this affect people?
How does it affect people, and what do we do about it, right?
Yeah.
So, it affects people because these abusees are going to blame themselves. They're going to feel broken and unworthy of especially spiritual enlightenment, whatever form that might take. Not worthy of it is, That should say a lot, just that sentence there. But they might participate in abuse themselves, like kind of what I talked about a little bit, but you debunked that, so I'm not an abuser out there, right? So they believe that they're evil and damned to suffer. Like I said, they're cut off from the source of the spiritual enlightenment. They're cut off from God.
From forgiveness.
Forgiveness, of course, can't be forgiven, even though that's not what it says in the book. But and they can have PTSD from it. And then, kind of the biggest thing is that, guess what they're going to do? They're going to turn away from religion later in their life when they have a choice about it. And that's me in a heart, that's me in a nutshell right there. I don't want any part of it because of all the things we've experienced.
Yeah. So, yeah, those are exactly the ways that it would play out. And then also, if you have kids, you would probably be forcing these like outdated and harmful views onto your children, thinking that that's you passing on something valuable to them when actually you're causing them harm. And you may not realize that until later.
Right, and we may be skipping something here too, where we're thinking, you're thinking to yourself, well, these are all religious leaders. They're not. They're not all religious leaders. We did describe it that way, but it's also family members that do this. And, and people in your life, like my friend and me, and, and things like that. But family members are a big thing too, because, they're the ones pressuring the children to go to the, worship in the first place because they want to pass on their belief system.
You know who else loves the church? Abuse apologists. Love the church, right? Because forgiveness.
Yeah, you can be forgiven.
And people are flawed. Isn't it funny that when it's an abuser being called into account, that all of a sudden it's, well, we can't judge someone based on one action, and humans are flawed individuals, and he seems remorseful, but if it's a gay person or a trans person or some slutty female, right? Where did that go then for those people?
Yeah.
So it's very selective how certain things are applied based on who the person is.
It's interesting. The abusers tend to stick together in churches too.
Oh, man.
You know what I mean? They kind of know who each other are in a lot of ways, and maybe they aren't saying it, but they're going to stick up for each other because deep down in their heart they know that one day somebody could come for them.
Now, if this has happened to you, the question might be, what do I do now? And I have a couple of suggestions. One is to find a therapist or a spiritual leader or somebody, a coach, someone who knows about spiritual abuse, someone who understands it, hopefully maybe has even been through it, would be ideal. And start, finding those perspectives among your peers. Get online and find groups where you can listen to other people's stories or read other people's stories and know that you're not alone. So find your peers, find your professionals, and find a new fucking church where you don't feel like shit because they're out there. There are good churches with good people doing good work who are non-judgmental and accepting and kind and warm. They care about humanitarian issues, and they are truth speakers. And that's where you will feel the most comfortable.
Really? They're out there?
There are.
Okay. I need to find one. Maybe.
There are. Absolutely. And I have, in my few years here as a therapist, I have met some really great Christians that has totally changed my perceptions on things. So yeah, it's definitely out there, but you got to have the courage and conviction to find it and to buck the system, swim against the current, and do something different. I hope this has been helpful. Andrew, thank you so much for presenting this topic with me.
Thank you for having me on.
You're a really smart guy.
No.
I think you are.
Nah.
The glasses make you look real smart. That's why I wear my glasses.
Mm-hmm. Well, you look very smart, but you always did. So.
All right, well, thanks for watching.